Hello, I'm Aaron Roberts from the Willard Second Ward, and I was asked to share something on missionary work. I think we have all been impacted one way or another with missionary work, but something that I would like to share is more of my personal story of member missionary work and how it impacted me. To give you some of my background, soon after high school, I moved to Salt Lake City, and there I lived for about 4 years, from about age 18 to 22, 23. And I lived with roommates and friends that really didn't have a particular faith. We had missionaries from the LDS Church come by all the time, once a month, and missionaries from other churches too. And a few times I had the LDS missionaries come in and share their message about, Joseph Smith, I remember hearing, and things like that. And I was, somewhat familiar with the message, but I just really didn't give them a chance. I was always leaving or always, doing something. But to make a long story short, none of the friends that I was living with were getting an education. They're kind of getting into trouble and stuff too. And I felt like, something was missing from my life. Didn't really know what. Maybe it was direction or something. But I felt like something was missing, something needed to change. So I wanted to finish my education, and I wanted to move up to Logan and attend USU. In Logan, I had missionaries stop by my apartment too, though. Right when I moved in, and then we had some members from the singles ward stop by. I found out they were my neighbors. They had 4 or 5 members living there together, and they would stop by pretty frequently, about 3 to 4 times a week. And they invited me to some of the activities that they were having. I remember kickball was the first thing that I attended, and all the different activities. They had barbecues and things like that, and that was great. And so I started to go to those. And then they started asking me to come to church and to elders quorum, and they even asked me to teach a bit after I started attending, the sacrament service and going to elders quorum. And I can see what they're doing now. What they were doing now was, to help me, learn the doctrine and read and be fellowshipped, which is smart. But they didn't realize that I didn't have the priesthood. So I didn't have the priesthood. I ended up teaching a little bit. I was actually called to a teaching position without having the priesthood, and I still wonder if, that was allowed, but it worked. But anyway, what I realized is that it wasn't, so much the social events and activities and church attendance, so much that I desired and that I yearned for. It was, being touched by the Spirit. I think that was the first time that I read the Book of Mormon in my life, when I started to go to church and started to study for lessons and discussions that we were having. And this is what I wanted to get to. There's a beatitude in the New Testament, and when Christ visits the Nephites, he says, "Blessed are the poor in spirit." It's in 3rd Nephi, as well as in the New Testament. And I think sometimes when we read that and when we hear that, we may not actually understand or take it as it's meant to be taken. The thing about Christ is that those people that are kind of on the lower crust of society, I guess you could say, were drawn to him. When you think about the people that were drawn to him, they were very humble, but they were very poor in spirit. And what I realized is that something was missing, and when I ended up serving a mission and receiving the priesthood, I got the priesthood when I was 24, ended up serving a mission a little bit later. And it was a great experience, but I found that those who I taught had the same deficit, I guess you could say. They were spiritually poor. They were spiritually bankrupt. And I think a lot of us feel that way at some point, where the activities, teaching about, Joseph Smith is really great. And it's always good to know the doctrine, But I think what people are really yearning for is to be filled by the Spirit. And if we read 3rd Nephi with Christ visiting the Nephites, you can do as I have done. I've circled all the words that says filled. When he administers the sacrament, they are filled. And later it goes on to say they were filled with the Spirit. And I think that is our message, to focus our message to bring people to Christ so they can be filled. If we think of the sacrament that we have, it says that they may always have the Spirit to be with them. That's part of the sacramental prayer. And I think that's what really people are yearning for. That's what I yearned for. I liked all the events, all the extracurricular things, but I really wanted to be filled. I really wanted to, find my way, and I really wanted to be directed to the Savior. If you read about as well in the Saints book and in church history, when Joseph Smith and Oliver Cowdery were baptized and they received ordinances, it says that their minds were opened and they received greater light and knowledge. And we don't just have a great church, but we have a church that is Christ's church. We become filled. We really do. We become filled with comfort, with peace, with doctrine. We become filled with the Spirit, something that we've been so long without. And so that's my story. I think when we focus on the Savior more in our lessons, when we focus more in our reading, we can feel that Spirit. And I think that's what really draws people. I don't think any other type of thing can draw people quite as the gospel of Jesus Christ and focusing on the Savior. I was able to attend seminary and institute training, and one thing they taught is that when you read the scriptures and when you teach from the scriptures, help the students and help yourself, if it's personal study, to identify the commandment, what's being said, and then beyond that, go a little bit beyond that, at least, to find the principle. The principle could be charity or humility or some type of attribute of Jesus Christ. But then when you go beyond that, you find Christ. So you go from the commandments to the principles and then to God. And I think that's what we really need to be focused on. I don't think it's a coincidence that the Book of Mormon has almost every other verse, on average, reference to the Savior. We speak of Christ, and I think that's what ultimately draws people. And I saw that on my mission when I stopped teaching so much about the extracurriculars or some of those other things, the activities, the events, and really focused on the Savior, that He can heal you, that He can help you, that He can bless you, to draw people to Him. I think that's where missionary work really improved in the areas that I served when I started to teach more about the Savior. One other thing I just thought of is in 3rd Nephi as well, when Jesus was there, they had their own sacrament, they did all of that, and what you'll notice is that they really wanted to be there. I think sometimes when we attend our church service, we think, are the 2 hours up? Are we done so we can go home and watch TV or whatever? But I think if we try to fill people that are spiritually destitute, they will want to be there, and they will see that this is the Church of Christ.